Helck is a big chunky Giga Chad who looks like he spends more time in the gym than Andrew Tate does. He's born as the savior of mankind, the chosen hero from the gods, but decides to YOLO it all and prepares to become the next Demon King. To achieve his goal, he ends up participating in the new Demon King selection tournament, which is being held under the supervision of one of the 4 heavenly kings, called Vermilio the Red, who is a level 78 fire demon. She is assisted by the level 48 demon named Han, as she fills in for another heavenly king called Azudora, who got injured while checking on a defeated demon king's castle in his domain. The tournament is being held because one of the demon kings called Thor was defeated by the human hero, and a new replacement is needed to fill in his position. Han informs Vermilio about the enhanced security measures that they have taken for this tournament, as well as the usage of the deep green contract made by Azudora himself. He then shows her a live feed of the participants duking it out in the Colosseum. One human-looking guy piques Vermilio's interest as she watches him wipe the arena with other contestants. She asks about him from Han, and he tells her that he is in fact the human hero Helck, who has decided to compete to fill in for the role of the new Demon King. And Vermilio loses her head as soon as she realizes what she just heard. She asks him how they let the human hero inside with all these security measures, but Han says that he joined in fair and square by getting through the preliminary rounds, which were open to all races. Vermilio says of course that is for everyone except humans, as they are their mortal enemies, but Han is not so sure about that and tries to save his demonic ass by telling her that she doesn't have anything to worry about, as Helck hates all humans and wants to destroy them all, and shows a video of him claiming to do so. Vermilio becomes even more angry and says that he is obviously lying, but Han reminds her that like all participants, he has signed the deep green contract, which renders him unable to do any damage to anyone outside of the tournament. She still seems skeptical of his motives and says that he must be trying to thin out their forces by defeating their powerful warriors in a 1v1 battle. And even if he wins, there is no way the citizens of the Empire would accept a human as the new Demon King. But it does not seem to be an issue, as Helck quickly becomes the crowd's favorite due to his insane Sigma male charisma that he inherited from his great-grandfather Giga Chad. Vermilio still feels uneasy and bursts out in an explosion with rage and says that he is a threat, so she must eliminate him herself. However, Han says that the deep green contract also protects the participants from any damage from outside of the tournament. And even if it wasn't the case, Helck is level 99, so there's no possible way anyone could defeat him. This fuels Vermilio with rage, who screams we're all doomed, and she blows the top of the castle up, revealing a starry sky up above. She tells Han that he will be facing more than just a demotion as punishment for this blunder, but he tells her that he has an incredible plan to save them all, and suggests changing the next match into a card stacking competition. He says that he will make sure Helck gets these super glossy cards so he loses for sure, and this way they could safely disqualify him. Vermilio thinks about it for a second but decides to get on with it anyways, as they don't really have any other options on the menu. The next day, all the participants gather in the Colosseum and take to their stations. The referee announces the rules and marks the beginning of the competition. As expected, the Helck has trouble stacking his cards, but then claps his hands and goes into a super focused state before releasing an immense aura, which knocks down all the other card castles. He then stocks up his cards at breakneck speeds and ends up winning the round with the top score. Vermilio says that they can use it against him by saying that he cheated. But before she can announce that, the other participants read too much into the rules and say that the idea behind this lame round must be to test their strategic capabilities, as the card stacks represent their demon castle that they have to protect from others, and it leads to an all-out battle royale with everyone trying to stack up their cards while trying to knock the others down. For the next few rounds, Vermilio and Han try a bunch of different games like demon chess, sculpting wood, and even a cooking competition that Vermilio judges herself, but Helck bests all of them with his superior genes and Sigma skills, leaving even Vermilio a fan of his special cream dessert. Meanwhile, Vermilio has her agent called Asta on a secret mission to scout the human realm and see what they have been up to so she can relay that information back to her, using her special ability which allows her to communicate with her twin sister simply by drinking coffee. She tells her that the late Demon King Thor was actually defeated by Helck's brother Kless, who is also a hero. We then see Helck making friends with 2 of the leading participants in the tournament, named Kenrose and Hura. He shows them a picture of him and his younger brother. Besides that, she noticed something strange while traveling in the human realm. All the 3 towns that she visited were empty. It looked like people had been there just a second ago, but the whole place was deserted. Just then, Han rushes into the room and announces that he has bad news. It turns out another demon king called Urim was attacked by an army of flying human-like soldiers. The demon king managed to hold them off until the citizens evacuated, but ended up trading his life in doing so. This makes Vermilio mad and concerned as she worries that they might attack the capital next, and wonders what wretched means the humans use this time to harness such power. After this, she sends one of her spies to scout Urim's castle so they can get some more information on their enemies. Meanwhile, Han suggests another option for the next round of the Demon King selection tournament, which turns out to be a horse race over an obstacle course laced with deadly traps. To make things worse for Helck, he rigs the horse selection lottery and makes him ride a little dog instead of a horse to make sure he loses this time. Vermilio worries that the people will notice this unfairness towards Helck, but they turn out to be as gullible as their grandmas on the phone to a Nigerian man telling her she's won a free vacation. With everything in place, the race begins with a bang and everyone zooms past Helck while his dog struggles to breathe and stay alive under his fat heroic cake. The announcer decides to shift her focus towards the other contestants as Helck fails to even get out of the Colosseum on a mere dog. The hero-killing traps prove to be hard for many demons to overcome, but still a handful of them manage to make it through the most of it, and it looks like they will actually win, including Kenrose and Hura. Just then, we hear a big boom and see Helck zooming past all the contestants, catching up with his buddies on the front lines, running on his own. Midway, he decides to pick the dog up and starts running full speed. Vermilio says that that's cheating as this is a horse race, but Han explains that legs touching the ground while riding a horse isn't really against the rules. As crazy as that sounds, being the crowd favorite, Helck manages to get in the top 4 anyways. Vermilio tells Han that she's going to turn him into a roasted kebab if Helck wins, so he decides to burn the final bridge with explosives while trying to get Helck caught in it as well. Unfortunately, his workers turn out to be dumber than anime haters and they blow the bridge up way before anyone makes it across, much less Helck. As the race comes close to its end, we see Kenrose boast about his speed and adapting Helck's strategy as he jumps off his horse and starts running on his own as well. Hura settles for the 3rd spot as Helck zooms past her and beats Kenrose by a millisecond, securing 1st place. With that, we get down to our last 4 contestants for the new Demon King role, and Vermilio decides to set the whole place on fire in a rage. But just before she can do so, Ista walks in and tells her that she has news from the spy who went to investigate Urim's castle. She tells her that there appears to be about 103 winged knights stationed in the castle, with one of them acting as their commander. Vermilio says that the previous Demon King must have massively reduced their numbers before going down, and wonders what to do about this effed up situation. Just then, the other Heavenly King Azudora walks in looking all cool, and tells her that he has an idea which will solve all her problems. She thought he was too injured to walk around, which was the whole reason she was filling in for him in the first place. However, she turns around only to see him on the brink of death, all bandaged up and bleeding. So she tells him to go and rest, but he insists that she needs to hear his plan. He suggests they make the final round of the tournament a competition to take back Urim's castle, and whoever kills the commander of the Winged Knights would be crowned the next Demon King. Vermilio worries that if Helck turns out to be an actual enemy, as she suspects, then they would be in a very tough position surrounded by the Winged Knights and him. But Azudora says that he will create deep green rings that will enforce the deep green contract even outside the capital, and this way they can feel at ease with Helck. Vermilio says that she will accompany the contestants just in case, and with that, Azudora creates the rings in 5 days. Vermilio disguises herself as an admin staff member named Anne and cut her hair short. We also get to see the 4th contestant, who is a bald candy-loving demon named Dorsch. After this, they all depart for Castle Urim, and we get to see Oster roaming in the human realm, wondering about the lack of toxins in the environment. It turns out the Demon Empire is almost entirely covered with a toxin which corrupts the local plants and animals, turning them into monsters which attack humans and monsters alike. Even a demon can't withstand the toxin and not get corrupted, which is why all of their cities are covered by a strong magical barrier that keeps the toxins out. Zooming back to our aspiring Giga Chad, we see the contestants engage with a fleet of monsters on their way. Everyone fights them off with their weapons while Dorch says that he will use his Type 2 special ability, which creates an immensely strong barrier around them. The condition to activate this ability turns out to be the need to eat a bean, which Dorch gobbles up and starts charging. But when Vermilio asks how long it will take to erect the barrier, he says at least 20 minutes, making her go up in flames due to his stupendously disappointing response. And she ends up burning all the monsters. They all then make their way to the second checkpoint, which is a rest house with a barrier around it. Once there, Vermilio thinks about their battle earlier and notes how Helck is immune to toxins. Meanwhile, Hira manages to figure out Anne's real identity and reveals it to Kenrose, but Vermilio tells them to keep it a secret as she works on her plan to keep an eye on Helck without letting him know her true identity. After that, they all depart for their destination through a tunnel that leads to a checkpoint near the castle. On their way, they encounter many monsters and we get a short introduction for each one of them from Kenrose, who's fast on his feet but useless without any weapons. They clear their path and make their way straight to the castle but end up running into a new world lifeform. These beings are super strong monsters that appear from time to time in places with high levels of toxins. Helck seems to know exactly what the monster is and says that he will deal with it himself. He walks towards it and everyone expects him to use the sword on his hip. But being the meathead he is, he simply one-shots the monster with a simple kick and then equips his short sword for the victory pose. This leaves everyone shocked regarding his strength, and with that, they continue their journey towards the castle. Once they make their way out of the tunnel, they're greeted by Vermilio's spy named Kishuki, who has been hiding behind a wall cover all this time. He reveals that there is a secret passage that leads straight into the castle and needs a special phrase to be said for it to open up. But unfortunately, the special words turn out not to be "Open Sesame." The spy leaves and everyone else walks inside the castle. Before walking in, we see Hira resolve to become the next Demon King and go for the kill on the commander of the Winged Knights, while Vermilio thinks back on her conversation with Azudora about his injuries. He had told her that he was the one who informed Helck about the tournament, and it was on the day he finished making all the preparations to create the Deep Green contract. After doing his work, he had some time to kill, so he went to Castle Thor, and that was where he met him. He knew that Helck was trouble, so he tried to get him using his traps, but all of them failed. Vermilio thinks that this was when Helck beat Azudora and that's how he must have gotten his injuries, but it turns out he was just careless and fell in one of his own traps, and when he opened his eyes, he was in a bed with all the bandages as Helck had saved him. And that's when he told him about the tournament. Vermilio looks at his stupid smartass and wonders how he even became a heavenly king. He confesses that if Helck wanted to, he could have sent him straight into the next world. But he chose not to and even helped him, which prompts him to trust in him as a friend of the demon kind. With that, they make their way inside the castle and get a good look at the enemy commander, who happens to be accompanied by 6 other Winged Knights. Immediately, Hira jumps in and charges straight towards the commander while Kenrose and the others deal with the numerous Winged Knights. Helck slowly walks towards them too, while Vermilio wonders if he would actually fight the knights or not. Just then, the commander of the Winged Knights rushes forward and cuts off one of Hira's arms with his sword. The commander then marches forward and prepares to take her head as well, but just then Helck calls out his name, Edil, and stops him. The commander turns around and takes his helmet off to reveal a feeble-looking young man with white hair, much like Helck. They talk about the awakening, and it turns out that humans have evolved into their true form through mysterious means, and have awakened as heroes. They grow stronger with each battle and plan to march further into the Demon Empire and take over it. With that, a bunch of Winged Knights fly in and surround them. One of them tries to sneak up on Vermilio, but she simply burns his arse into barbecue and says if this is their level of strength, then they won't have any trouble dealing with them. Hearing this, Vermilio starts sweating and thinks that it has been over 255 years since the last hero was born, and even now there are 2 heroes, which is an absurd anomaly. How is it possible that all the humans have awakened as heroes? Edil says that this is the beginning of the era of peace for humans as the knights gang up on the demons, but just then Hira stands up and comes in with a clutch and strikes one of Edil's wings off. Edil falls back and says that he is sure he cut her arm off, but she says that everyone knows that arms grow back in a few minutes. Hearing this, everyone including the demons look at each other and wonder if she is crazy or they are dumb. To save our brain cells, Vermilio comes in and explains that Hira is from the Ahold tribe, which possesses the ability of extreme regeneration. She then engages in a fight with him and manages to cut his other wing too, which lowers his heroic powers. With the commander down, Vermilio decides to finish the other knights off and uses her multi-fire spirit summoning jutsu and shoots them all down like dumb moths. Hira decides to finish the commander off and claim her position as the new Demon King, but Helck blocks her attack, making them think that he is on the human side after all. He tells her that killing the knights is a bad idea, but just before he can explain further, Edel gets Garen ult-ed by another winged knight who drops his sword and rips through Edel's guts. Everyone stares in confusion, but just then the ground beneath them breaks apart, and they all fall down into the underground basement of the castle. There they find a special crystal that is normally used to support the barrier that surrounds the city to protect it from the toxins. But there seems to be a portal on top of it with the knights' swords around it. Vermilio explains that the humans were planning to harvest the crystal's energy to create a teleportation portal to make a gate connecting them to the Demon Empire. But now that the spell has failed, the portal starts to suck everything around it with incredible force. Durush finally manages to erect his barrier and protects them all, but the force of the portal starts to slowly rip even that apart. Vermilio says that she will go out and destroy the crystal, and that should stop the portal as well, but it will put her life in danger. She decides to do it anyway and marches out of the barrier, but just before she can cast her spell up close, a flying piece of wood hits her head and knocks her out. With that, she loses her strength and flies towards the portal, but just before she gets sucked in, she regains her consciousness and manages to blast the crystal into bits and pieces. But it does make the portal vanish right away, and she gets sucked in anyways. But before it happens, Helck jumps in to save her, but being a meathead, he forgets to tie himself to anything and gets sucked in with her as well. On the other side of the portal, we see Vermilio wake up in the human realm. She finds herself stranded at the shore napping over Helck's crummy cape, but she acknowledges that it actually smells good. She looks around and wonders what this huge body of water is and realizes that it must be the ocean that she saw in the books, and wonders where in the world she even is. Going back in time, before Vermilio became Anne, we see her arguing with Azudora, who doesn't want her to cut her hair. He says that if she wants to do it, it would be over his dead body, so she says okay and burns him to a crisp and goes along with her haircut. Cutting back to our fiery hot heavenly queen, she chills around the place and wonders if she got teleported to the edge of the continent. She then appreciates the beauty of the place and how there are no toxins here. Just then, she hears the sound of a Sigma male doing Sigma things. She follows it and ends up finding Helck building a full-fledged house. She then hears a rustling sound from the bushes behind her and encounters a talking bird-like thing who greets her. She tells it to stay quiet, but then notices Helck sitting behind her, which scares the living barbecue out of her. He tells her that they are on an island somewhere far away from the main continent, and that he built the house to protect them from the rain. Just then, it starts pouring and he decides to pick Vermilio up like a log and transports her inside the house as she refuses to join him. Soon the rain stops and they both walk out with the soft birdie. Meanwhile, Azudora takes out a map of the continent and uses a magic doll that he creates with Vermilio's hair to find her exact location. He casts his magic and the doll starts moving, but to everyone's surprise the thing lands far off the map. Azudora starts worrying for his Vermilio-chan as he is a simp like Sanji, and wonders what he should do to get her back. On the other side of the map, Ista tells Asta about the situation as she sits on a hill scouting the humans' main headquarters. Back on the island, Vermilio decides to fish while thinking about her situation, but ends up losing the one that caught her bait. To prevent her from feeling sad, Helck jumps into the water and comes up with a freaking sea goat thingy and says that she caught a great fish. Vermilio says that that thing isn't even a fish, much less the one she caught, and asks where in the hell did he even find that thing, to which Helck says that he found it walking on the ocean floor. The next morning, Vermilio wakes up to a fat pink dude who brings her some half-eaten breakfast like my Uber Eats driver. She asks him why he is helping her, and he says that he is doing it to return the favor of the Giga Chad who travels with her. Vermilio then asks him to take her to his village and wonders why everyone is so welcoming to them as strangers. But it turns out that only the birdie and this Uber Eats driver are the only idiots in the village, and the others are actually wary of them. There, she meets up with the birdie who says that she smells like an old lady and tells her that Helck is busy building a ship. Hearing this, Vermilio thinks that Helck must have found the direction back to the continent and rushes to find him. She eventually runs into him chopping some wood with an axe, but the axe gives in first. He then continues to chop the wood with his hands like Bruce Lee if he was on steroids. She asks him about it, but he says that he figured they would think about it later, so he built the boat first. He then goes on to create a makeshift raft from the huge logs, making Vermilio wonder about his skill as a shipwright. She also checks up on some runes and wonders why they look familiar to her, but just then, the chief of the village walks up to them while wearing a dark hoodie and says that he wants them to accompany them back to the village for an important discussion. The chief then takes them to the woods and they soon find themselves surrounded by a bunch of hooded figures. Vermilio thinks that they were being ambushed, but it turns out they were just the villagers from earlier, and they were all there to surprise her alongside Helck and throw them a warm welcome party. In the party, Vermilio talks with the chief and finds out that a great witch lives on the island up a mountain. She has her place surrounded by a big barrier as she doesn't like anyone disturbing her experiments, but she does visit them every so often. He tells them that she might know the direction to the continent, and that they should take a couple days off as the witch would come to the village soon. With this, Vermilio chills for the next 2 days with the villagers and Helck. She gets to have a heart-to-heart with Helck as well, who tells her that he expected the demons to reject him, but they were actually very welcoming, and he is so grateful for that. She tells him that there are all sorts of people in all races, and he just happened to meet the good ones. He says that that's true, but he is still grateful because living alone is actually really painful. He also explains that the guy from earlier, Edel, was actually his former comrade in arms, and they used to do everything together, but then this whole awakening thing started and humans turned into the puppets of the human king. They are now akin to pests on this planet, and he must get rid of them as the only true human left. Back in the Demon Empire, Hera and the others are trying their best to fend off against the Winged Knights who try to retake Castle Urim. They get attacked by a new group of Winged Knights, but Han and the others soon arrive on the scene to rescue them. They lead the knights to an open ground with some withered trees and meet up with Azudora, who is wearing a stupid-looking mask to hide his angry face. It turns out Azudora is actually the Hashirama of this world, as he uses his wood jutsu to control the trees around him to subdue all the Winged Knights. They think that he is the top dog of the demons, but he reveals that he is just one of the 4 heavenly kings, and there are many people in the Empire who are much stronger and higher than him in the food chain. He offers them the option to surrender, but they refuse, and much like with Eden, a new fleet of knights appear on the scene and they shoot down their captured allies to death. But before they die, they reveal that there is no death for them, as they will immediately get resurrected, and with every battle they fight, they get stronger and level up. Their true purpose is to gain more and more strength until they are truly invincible, and then they will rule over the entire world. With that, all of their corpses turn into magical lights and vanish into thin air. On the other hand, Asta confirms that all the humans were revived at the foot of the Human King, and it looked as if they were being summoned using magic. Azudora calls a meeting right there to evaluate their situation and has the announcer Rococo bring up the chart of their military distribution. We find out that the Demon Empire has most of its forces up north, where the threat level is at a whopping SS after that. The south and west are at rank C, while the humans in the west are normally ranked the lowest at E, as they are the weakest of the races. However, this is when they do not have a hero among them. But if all the heroes have awakened as Winged Knights, then their threat level may be up to rank C. He then confirms from Hera that the Knight's average level is at around 30, while a commander may be level 35. He then explains that their resurrection power must be from a strong spell, much like his Deep Green contract, but on a much larger scale at much higher power. He then gives command to everyone to reinforce their defenses and try their best to capture the humans instead of killing them to prevent them from growing stronger. Besides that, he tells them to try to dispatch a rescue team to find and bring Vermilio back, but it proves to be too hard an ask as they don't even know her approximate location yet. We also find out that Hera is friends with Ista, and she is also the one who trained Asta, while everyone is busy making preparations for the war against humans. Azudora goes to the basement of Castle Urim with Han and says that he will try to create a mini portal using his powers, and doing it in this place now might enable them to send some stuff to the same location where Vermilio and Helck are. He prepares a letter and some items telling Vermilio about the direction of the Demon Empire, and then uses every little ounce of magic power he has to create a mini portal. They manage to send the items through, but it sucks the living daylights out of Azudora to do so. Unfortunately for him, Birdie finds the direction locating device, which looks like a piece of useless wood, and the letter for Vermilio, and being the bird brain that it is, shoves it all into the fire that Vermilio is using to cook their meal for the day. The next day, Vermilio sits on top of the hill eating an apple while watching Helck play with Bird Brain and Rockbutt. Just then, the hungry Uber Eats driver comes up to her and tells her that the Great Witch was in the village. Hearing this, Vermilio and Helck rush towards the village chief's house, but they turn out to be too late. It turns out the Uber Eats driver fell asleep on his way and forgot to tell them about the witch earlier. Fortunately, the chief had told the witch about them, and she had agreed to help them and had put her barrier down for the day. Hearing this, Vermilio and Helck run up the mountain with Birdie leading the way. They eventually come across the Great Witch, who looks remarkably similar to Vermilio. She turns out to be a very strong demon and tells them the direction of the continent they came from, suggesting there are other continents on the planet as well, something Vermilio and the people of the continent aren't aware of. She then tells them that they would need a sea monster called Krostak to help them lead the way through the thick mist mist on the ocean. She says that it's super rare to find one of those as they walk on the ocean floor and shows them a picture of the beast. It turns out to be that sea goat thingy that Helck caught earlier. Hearing this, Helck jumps into the ocean and ends up catching 3 of them. The witch says that they would also need a proper boat and gives them a magic motor that will help them get their boat moving. She also warns Vermilio about a hidden darkness within Helck and tells her to be careful around him. After that, Helck and the villagers spend the next few days building the boat, and finally the time for their departure comes. They thank everyone and say their goodbyes and finally depart for the continent. Once they are some ways away from the island, Bird Brain, whose real name is Peewee, climbs out of a barrel and reveals that it would be going with them as well. It also has a letter attached to him from the witch, who tells Vermilio to ease up and take a chill pill. Vermilio says that there's no way she is taking this feeble bird back and decides to turn around, but just then they get attacked by a huge kraken and Vermilio rushes them away from the place using the magic motor. After that, they spend the next few days sailing through the ocean and use the crossstag to get through the misty ruins. One night, they get caught in a whirlpool. Vermilio tries to get them out, but they get attacked by the same kraken monster at the same time, and things start looking grim for them. Helck decides to take the monster on himself and tells Vermilio to focus on getting the boat out of the whirlpool. He jumps on the kraken and starts punching it, but the sea monster turns out to be immune to physical attacks due to its rubbery skin. It coils its tentacles around Helck and squeezes him like a ketchup bottle before taking him to the bottom of the ocean for a one-way ride to the other world. Vermilio worries for the human hero, but then focuses on getting the boat out and eventually makes it to the shore of the continent. She looks worried and surprised as she finds Helck standing on the shore, waiting for her with a goal sign in his hands. She asks him how he manages to make it to the shore before her, and he says that after defeating the monster, he simply swam, and before he knew it, he was on the shore. Vermilio decides to not think too much about it and tells him to move on with the journey. But this plan quickly comes to a halt as they get ambushed by some sissy monster people who turns out to be the soldiers of the former kingdom of Errol, which fell to a group of 50 people from the Toffman tribe. Ever since, the Toffman king has put them all under his curse, which makes them look like ugly monsters, and it also renders them unable to disobey him. They capture new people on the Toffman king's orders, who put those people under his curse too to increase his forces. Helck and Vermilio join them for fun and giggles and later end up defeating the Toffman kind with some backhanded Asian parent-style slaps. They receive some money as reward from the saved people of the kingdom and march on towards the next big kingdoms in hopes of finding a map to the Demon Empire. Unfortunately, they find out that both kingdoms went on a dumb war and ended up destroying each other completely. The merchant on their way tells them to go to the next town over if they want to try their luck. Our group does just that and manages to find a map to the Demon Continent, but it costs over 50,000 lin. After converting all the money they had on them, it only comes out to around 25,000 lin. They look for other ways to get more money and end up joining a massive cooking competition, which turns out to be Food Wars from Wish.com with Chinese soma and everything. After some crazy moanful food cooking, Helck comes out on top and they manage to win 30,000 lin from it. They use the money to get the map, which turns out to only have a small dab of ink representing the empire. Regardless, this gives them a direction to walk to, so they ignore the fact that they got scammed and head towards the next kingdom that comes in their way. However, they are warned not to do so by a local singer who says that a warrior of darkness dwells in the ruins of the next kingdom. But being the Giga Chads they are, our group marches straight on. Long story short, the warrior of darkness turns out to be the older brother of the songstress, and after getting corrupted with dark magic, his soul was unable to leave this realm. Helck and the guy duke it out for hours as the warrior is invincible, but this sends Helck into a frenzy when he watches the warrior point his sword towards his friends, and he unleashes a mad barrage of punches and combos, beating the warrior into a pile of dark sadness. Seeing this, Vermilio remembers what the Great Witch told her about a darkness being present within Helck and how he mentioned being pained by being alone. She brings him back to his senses with some power of shouting his name like Sakura shouts Naruto, and the warrior also stops fighting when he hears Birdie sing the same song his younger sister uses to hum. It brings the warrior back to senses, and he gives Helck his cursed sword as a gift, which happens to have the ability to reconstruct itself after getting damaged. On the other side of the map, humans try to retake Castle Urim, but Azudora and his forces intercept them and push them back into the human realm. After their preparations are done, they have their defenses up and soon engage in another battle against the humans at Castle 4. We see many familiar faces like Edel and the other winged knights that Azudora defeated, fighting against Hura and other demon commanders. The humans are slowly but surely growing stronger as Hyrule notes that Edel has leveled up to 36 in the short time they didn't see him. With the war still being in favor of the demons, Azudora directs his efforts towards looking for Vermilio. He does the hair doll magic Helck once again, and to his surprise, it shows Vermilio back on the back this time. This makes everyone happy, and he orders them to get a detailed map of the region so they can get a more accurate location of her. On the other hand, Vermilio and the others get some camels to help them cross the land, and they even get to stay at a fancy hotel on a discount thanks to Helck and Vermilio's sick dance moves. With their journey going good, one night while camping outside, Helck talks to Vermilio and tells her about his broken sword, the Hero Slayer. He says that even though it's broken, it should still have enough power to kill a hero. He tells her that he wants her to keep it just in case he ever turns to the wrong side, and wants her to be the one to put an end to him. Azudora feels reluctant as she has grown closer to our Giga Chad, but he insists and hands the sword over. He says that he will tell her about his childhood and how he reached here, and then she can decide if she wants to take this responsibility or not. He then begins that he was born in a remote village with his younger brother, but one day monsters attacked and destroyed their village and killed their parents. Now orphans, they didn't have any place to go and were at constant risk of turning into monster food like this. Helck decided to take his brother and head to the Golden Capital to realize the American dream. But it turns out the fantasy world is just as bad as the real one, with its prejudice, as the poor orphans end up in slums and get treated like trash. Nobles look down upon them and they starve every day, not knowing where their next meal will come from. Despite all that, Helck tries his best to learn homely skills like cooking and everything, and helps raise his brother the best he can. But one day, Kless falls severely sick and it looks like he will die. Helck carries him on his back and walks door to door asking for help, but no one cares. Eventually, he falls down and looks depressed, cursing his fate, but then a young noble girl walks up to her and calls her father to help them. This girl is named Shalami and her father is a noble named Rafid. He decides to look after the kids, however he doesn't take them in. He takes the young Kless to the great sage Makaros, who happens to be his friend, and the young boy recovers eventually. Helck feels deeply grateful to the Nobel, and from that day on, their life becomes relatively easier as Shalami often comes to play with them and seems to lack the prejudice everyone else has towards them. We even see her and Kless getting close over the years, and Helck is all about shipping them. 15 years later, Kless is now a Nobel Knight commander who leads the 3rd platoon. He has trained his swordsmanship immensely and has become the star of the kingdom. Helck, on the other hand, decided to be the Tristan for Kless and does labor work to support his kid bro. Things look good for them as they become respected individuals of the kingdom, but the number of monster attacks has grown significantly over the years. So much so that Helck and some other workers are enlisted into the army and are sent to help on the front lines. This is where Helck befriends Edel and they work together to defeat tons of monsters. Helck also manages to defeat a new world lifeform and realizes that he might also have the blessing of the hero. On one of their encounters, they meet with a mercenary named Alicia who wields a holy sword and helps save people by killing monsters with her group. Helck and Edel join them on their mission and they fight together for a long time. Then one day, the Human King announces that the huge number of monsters are actually sent by the Demon King, and if they defeat him, then their issue would be solved. He summons Kless and tasks him with the mission to take down the Demon Lord, assisted by a knight named Zell and the great sage, Makaros. Kless goes to Castle 4 with his companions and they manage to eventually defeat the Demon King, but Kless comes back severely injured. Everyone rejoices at their victory as they expect the peace to finally prevail, but the monster attacks don't stop regardless. The people of the kingdom think that Kless and the others lied to them and just ran away from the Demon King, and they start cursing them. Alicia looks at Helck getting mad and tells him to calm down, but he says that it's possible that the Demon King revived himself, as he doesn't think Kless and the others are lying, but as monsters are coming from the direction of the Demon Castle, it is entirely possible that the Demon King managed to survive somehow. He says that he will go and defeat the Demon King himself with a serious look on his face. He then marches on towards Castle 4 and runs into Azudora, who happens to be walking there. At first, Helck thinks that he is the Demon King and starts fighting him, but Azudora holds him off for a bit. During their fight, Helck asks him why he is sending monsters their way, but Azudora says that the demons ain't the ones sending them, and the Demon King, Thor, must have told them about this when they attacked him. Hearing this, they both clear their confusion by introducing themselves, and Helck finds out about the existence of a demon empire, which had been forgotten in human history. He and Azudora have a long chat, and he tells him about a time when demons and humans lived together as friends while remembering an old human friend that he had. Azudora also tells Helck about the toxin and how it produces monsters, and how they had been doing their best to keep in check, but now that the Demon King was felled, the monsters in the region are going rampaging as no one is there to stop them. He then tells him about the tournament and how they are trying to recruit a new Demon King and sends him off. Helck returns to the human kingdom to tell everyone about the Empire, and how they want a friendly relationship with the humans, but to his horror, the defensive lines of the kingdom appear to have been crushed by a huge monster attack. It is at this point that he first feels an immense darkness swell within him, trying to come out as rage, making him want to go on a rampage. But he holds himself off and rushes to check up on his friends at the mercenary group and feel relieved to find them all safe. They tell them about the nobles doing their noble BS stuff and using commoners as human shields, and how Alice and Eden fought hard to protect them all. They then tell him to go check up on the two so they feel at ease regarding him. Helck goes out to find them but runs into the kingdom holding a public execution of 3 demons. He tries to defend the helpless fellow and stands in front of them as people throw rocks at them and tries to explain that demons ain't really the bad guys. But no one listens to him, and just then Raphid walks in and tells Helck that the demons are hiding their true colors, and just as he says that, the demons behind Helck turn into giant monsters and go on a rampage. Helck stands up to fight them, but just then 3 masked bulky dudes jump off the castle and defeat the monsters. Raphid says that they are awakened heroes like Helck and Kless, and with them on their side, the humans will finally see peace. With the awakened heroes defending the kingdom, peace truly comes to the kingdom for a brief period, but during this time, Helck doesn't get a chance to see his brother, who is apparently still injured and unconscious. One day, Helck decides to tell Edil and Alice about his encounter with Azudora while unknowingly agreeing to take Alice on a date, but before they can go out, the Knight Commander, Zell, walks in and begs for Helck's help. He tells them that the awakened heroes would spell disaster for the human race, and that they are actually death row criminals who were used for human experiment by Makaros and Raphid on the orders of the king by using Kless's hero factor. He then tells him that once a person is awakened, they lose all their will and turn into puppets for the nobles and the king, who use them as tools to fight monsters. He then tells him that their true goal is to convert all humans into awakened heroes and create a new world that is there only for the nobles. Hearing this, Alice and Edil join them in their conversation and say that they must stop all this from happening. Zell says that they must take Kless in their protection as he is crucial to their plan, and then get rid of the king if they can, to protect everyone, and with this their plan begins. They all infiltrate the castle one night and make it to the chambers where Kless is being kept. They find him sitting unconsciously on a chair in a room with magic circuits. As they walk in, the room lights up and they see the kingdom's senators and the king sitting above them. Makaros also joins them and they command Kless to put all the traitors, including his brother, down. Kless turns out to be under their spell and he starts fighting Helck. Helck tries to bring him back to his senses, but it's no use and he suffers various injuries from his sword. Just then, Alice jumps in and slashes Kless and it makes him fall down. Everyone gets surprised and it turns out her holy sword is blessed with the power to kill heroes. Makaros identifies it as the Hero Slayer and sweeps in with his shadow magic and shocks Alive down with an electric spell. He then uses the sword to injure Helck as well. Helck tries his best to fight back with every ounce of strength he has left, but it doesn't help. Just then, Kless stands up and the human king orders him to put his brother down. But Kless seems to have broken out of the curse and he fights Makaros and cuts his hands off by breaking the Hero Slayer in half. He then shoots his sword towards the king, but the king's mask protects him and he orders Kless again. Kless feels like he might lose control once again, so as a final effort, he walks up to his brother and apologizes for only causing him trouble and cuts himself off with the broken piece of the Hero Slayer. Watching his kid brother die in front of him, Helck feels the same darkness rise up within him and he snaps. He unleashes an extreme dark aura laced with killing intent and says that he will destroy them all. His haki proves to be too strong even for his allies, and no one wants to see him get mad like this. As things start looking grim, Alice comes in with a clutch and calms his anger down with a hug to her chest. Even the mighty Helck can't resist that and he starts crying like a baby, letting out all his frustration. As the adrenaline clears out of his system, he starts feeling weak again and goes unconscious, but this proves to be a bad thing for his friends as they barely manage to make it out of there with Helck. Sometime later, we see Helck wake up in a cave with a broken Hero Slayer and some food. He walks out only to have some bounty hunters trying to get him. From them, he finds out that his friends got captured and were being publicly executed. He resolves to save them all and marches back to the capital to save them. On his way, he fights many awakened warriors and learns about the infinite revival as well. He eventually makes it in time to save Alive just in time from becoming Madame Necklace. He carries her off the platform and runs into Raphid and tells him that the next time they meet, he won't go easy even if he is his enemy. Just then, a strange snow starts falling from the sky and Helck walks back and tells Alice that they will go to the Demon Empire and live there. Alive agrees, but then something strange starts happening to everyone around them. Raffid reveals that their plan to convert everyone into awakened soldiers succeeded, and this snow was actually the sign of the activation of the spell. Just like that, everyone around them starts turning into half-completed winged knights. Even Alice seems to have been affected by it, and Helck tries his best to save her, but she turns into a knight right in his arms. But before it happens, she begs him to slay her with the sword, but Helck can't bring him to do it, so she requests him to just smile for her, as it is the most precious thing she has ever seen. This makes Helck cry, and he drinks all his sadness up and musters up a smile for her. After that, he runs back to the capital and decides to defeat the king and Macaros to turn everyone back, but they explain that once it starts, there is no reversing the process even if he kills them. Helck tries to fight them anyways and even finds out that they used his brother's corpse to fuel their plans. He screams in rage, but Raffid and Macaros summons a teleportation portal and sends him off to the Demon Empire in hopes of getting rid of him. On the other side, when Helck opens his eyes, he is greeted by Kenros. He turns out to be a kind demon who doesn't care if he's a human or not and takes him back to his village and helps him recover. His villagers turn out to be good people too, and this is what warms Helck up to the demons. And this is how he ended up at the new Demon King selection tournament. After that, he hands the sword over to Vermilio and says that he initially wanted Azudora to have it as he is a heavenly king, but he never got to meet him, so he will entrust it to her. She takes the sword and reveals that she is not Anne and her real name is Vermilio the Red, and that she is also one of the 4 heavenly kings, and tells him that she will help him realize his goals as well. But for that he must promise her to fight to live, rather than fighting to die, and once everything is over, he can come live in the Empire. After this, they both continue with their journey back to the Empire, and even catch a train on their way. Meanwhile, Azudora sends a harpy to deliver a message to Vermilio which tells her to go to the south of the human realm instead of coming back to the kingdom, as their mission is to defeat the human king while they hold off their forces. Back in the human kingdom, Asta is spying as usual and relaying information ABC to the Empire. One day, she gets caught up in a pretty nasty sequence of events and barely saves her arse from getting caught by the winged knights. But in doing so, she ends up in the room of a young purple-haired girl who turns out to be none other than Helck and Kless's friend and Raffid's daughter, Shalomie. She doesn't have her guard up and doesn't seem to think ill of Asta. She hides her presence and even offers her snacks if he promises to talk to her and tell her about the world outside the kingdom. Asta finally gets a chance to drink some coffee and relays everything back to her sister and informs her about her safety. She also tells her about the humans' plan to attack Castle Shin in the south, and this helps them prepare in advance. A few days later, we see Zell and the other winged knights attack Castle Urim. They manage to cast a spell that summons tens of thousands of New World lifeforms and send them to attack the castle. However, thanks to Asta's information, they manage to hold their own against them. Even Azudora joins them with his fleet of archers and helps Demon King Shin. At the same time, we see Macaros invade Castle Thor with Edel and a fleet of 20,000 winged knights. He defeats a lot of the commanders and manages to even bring Hira to death's door, but Edel jumps in and says that he will fight her himself, protecting her in a way. Macaros marches on and plans to use the crystal in the castle's basement to use a powerful spell, but gets surprised when Azudora shows up on the scene and surrounds him with his tree branches infused with a barrier spell. It turns out he already knew of his plan and sent a fake Azudora to Castle Shin and stayed here to deal with Macaros himself. For some reason, Macaros knows Azudora personally, and we find out that he used to be a cannon fodder soldier in the human army thousands of years ago. This was the time when Azudora was in his edgy cool boy era, and he was feared as the hero killer on the battlefield who defeated tons of heroes from human kingdoms and struck fear in the hearts of anyone who saw him. Macaros managed to survive by hiding under the corpses of his companions, but got corrupted with the toxins. Somehow, he managed to overcome the poisoning, and it blessed him with a power from the new world much like Azudora's, which is eternal youth. He says that he has trained for over 15 years and was the one who actually defeated Thor and Urim. They then fight an epic battle, but Azudora seems to still be more powerful than the sage. However, Macaros never planned to defeat him solo. He uses a spell to break the seal on the winged knights and turn them into rampaging monsters, and this turns the tide of the war in their favor. Azudora cares for his allies and calls for Han and tells him to pull everyone back to Castle Urim, and then uses his tree magic to help everyone on the battlefield. Macaros uses this opportunity to escape and sees Edel helping Hira out of the castle. It turns out he likes her and his feelings are helping him break the king's curse over him. Macaros appears in front of them and uses a spell to forcefully break the curse on him, which turns him into a monster and sends him to fight Azudora, who is busy saving everyone on the battlefield. The corrupted knight, Edel, flies in and fights Azudora, and with his hands tied, he manages to finish him off. Meanwhile, we see Asta try to make a run for it with Shalami, who reveals that she knows Helck and Kless. It seems that she has no clue about what's happening outside, and she appears to have the power to make that snow that is used to spread the awakening power. Asta thinks that she would be crucial in their winning of the war, so she tries to run away with her, but they end up in the king's chamber, who tries to cut Asta down using her. But Raffid walks in and breaks his control from over Shalami and orders some winged knights to hold Asta down and says that this is the end for the demonkind. The next day, we see Vermilio and Helck march towards the human kingdom, but they get ambushed by Raffid alongside a bunch of winged knights while on their way to the Harpy camp outside of the kingdom. It turns out, Makaros can also use the locating spell, and he uses Helck's blood like Azudora used Vermilio's hair to keep track of him. Raffid tells Helck to step back from the war silently and live a quiet life away from the war. And no one would blame him, but he says that he is there to protect his new friends, which are the demons. Vermilio also steps up and they all engage in a battle. Vermilio says that she would support Helck and fights the winged knights with her fire summons and lets Helck deal with Raffid. While fighting, we see a new knight join the battle, and it turns out to be none other than Helck's old love and friend, Alice. While stepping up to her, Helck keeps up his fake smile and releases an immensely dark aura which puts all the other winged knights down. He prepares to slash her and put her out of her misery, but Vermilio realizes that if Helck cuts his old friend himself, then he might get further into depression or might give into the darkness even, so she jumps in and prevents it from happening with a fiery blast. She then faces Helck and tells him that instead of defeating the humans, they will work on saving his old friends, and this puts a relieving smile on Helck's face. She tells him that now she is with him, so he has nothing to worry about, and even argues back with Raffid that he doesn't have any proof regarding the awakening transformation to be irreversible. Seeing this, Helck's hope returns and the dark aura subsides. Raffid looks at them and tells Vermilio to stop giving him false hope as they manage to take down Azudora of the Heavenly Kings and have a fleet of winged knights at Castle Thor as well. Vermilio says that she has heard about Azudora's death more times than she can count, but that pervy-ass dude always comes back from the death's door, and true to her word, we discover Azudora is indeed alive, but in bandages once again. She says that he has been alive for far longer than her, so they should go and see him and ask him about any clues on reversing the awakening process. Watching Helck come back from his despair, Raffid decides to call it a day as well and pulls back his forces alongside Alice. Once the situation is calmed down, Helck and Vermilio go back to meet up with Piwi and the Harpies, as well as Rococo, who informs them about Castle Shin and Azudora's survival. They decide to go to Castle Shin and board the carriages. On the other hand, Azudora receives the news of Vermilio being well and her letter from the Harpies' leader. He then lies down and rests while thinking about his old friend, who seems to be a human hero from thousands of years ago when he was still young. And this brings the anime to an end. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe with notifications on so you never miss out on any more of my recaps. Until next time, take care.